Alright, this video is a shout out to Pat RMG. It's a cool YouTube channel I watch. He's a big lever gun guy. I commented on one of his videos a while back. He said he probably would love my old Marlin 336. So I thought I would share it. After I got this thing, it wouldn't shoot. It didn't have this scope on it. It had a kind of a crappy scope on it. It didn't have these Weaver style mounts on it either. It had some different mounts on it. And so every time I would shoot it, the scope would move. It would change. And I took a long time. I sat down, I took some sandpaper and I wrapped it around the paper side, around the top of this gun. And I took those scope mounts and I just rubbed them on that sandpaper until the bottom of these scope mounts bedded out to the same shape as the top of my receiver. And I spent a long time doing that and making sure I didn't scratch my gun in the process. Didn't make sure I didn't scratch anything or get any sand and dust on my gun. And I bedded those scope mounts in and bolted them down with Loctite. Then I took a scope. I think I actually took this scope and I wrapped sandpaper around the scope. And I sat there and bedded that scope in to these mounts. And man, it was all crooked at starting out. But when I got done, this scope was touching these mounts all the way around. And I took green Loctite and put in there and Loctited them down and bolted them down. And then I relined the scope up, bore scoped it, bore sighted it by taking my bolt out and looking through the barrel at the target. And I bore sighted it and set the scope up. And once I got that thing dialed in, man, now that thing is dead on. I hadn't shot it at long ranges, but 50 yards, it's hole for hole. It already had this little hammer deal for where it had a scope on it, and it had scope mounts before. So I already had that on it. So I didn't have to add that. But man, this thing is a good gun. I killed a deer with it last year on one of my YouTube videos. And I put these scope mounts on it that are see-throughs, so I can still see the open sights in case I was to drop my scope or it gets fogged up and I can't use my scope. I can still shoot a deer with my open sights. That was a must-have for me because you don't never know when something's going to happen and you're going to need to shoot a deer and something happened to your scope or you fell down and knocked it off and you don't want to trust that scope. It's got a little beat up on it. It ain't too bad. It's got a little spot right here. It was like that when I got it. And it may have been refinished one time, I'm not sure. But overall, it's in really good condition. The serial number says it was made in 1972. Marlin 336 3030. Man, I thought I'd share that with you. I figured you might like to see it. Old nostalgia. Yeah, this thing's got a micro groove barrel. It says model 336 right there. It's got a Nikon Buckmaster scope, 4 to 12 power. Reach out there and touch something. I really like it. Probably going to keep it. But I tell you what I would do is I would trade it in on a dark series, a newer model dark series, just because I like the dark series rifles. This one doesn't have any sentimental value to me. So it wouldn't be a real big deal to sell it, get rid of it. That may end up happening one day. And I may end up getting me one of them dark series rifles I can throw around and not worry about so much. There it is.